Welcome to episode 5 of the Grounded Seeker podcast. My name's Sam. So, have you ever had the experience, despite serious meditation practice, maybe hours per day, practicing self-inquiry, who am I, practicing Vipassana meditation? Let's even throw in things like breathwork, TRE, yoga, ecstatic dance. Now, all these things are, of course, they're wonderful spiritual endeavors. However, do you notice that when you audit your life and you look back on your experience in social situations, do you notice that you still struggle to show up fully authentically, to show up as yourself? Even if you've had an awakening, even if you've realized your true nature, it still feels difficult, right? We show up in social situations and there's this masking and all these little subtle games we can play with ourselves to really fit in. And Gabor Mate would call this the balance between authenticity and attachment. I think one of the traps of especially non-duality awakening, pursuing awakening, and this is what happened for me, was I thought that if I just woke up just enough, then I would be able to essentially transcend all of my neurotic patterns that were driving this need to sacrifice my authenticity over my need to be attached. If I just meditated hard enough, if I just had this next big emotional release from TRE, that these patterns wouldn't come up anymore in social encounters, right? And I would double down on that philosophy, keep doubling down on it with the hope that someday some big shift would happen, or I would just be able to surrender enough to the universe so that these concerns wouldn't be bothering me. That was my philosophy. Now, I've come to believe that this is not really the way, and this can actually sort of be a bypass. Because even with these profound modalities like TRE, even with breathwork, even with being with sensation, as we're often taught in non-duality, maybe you just feel the sensation, just rest as your true nature and surrender and let go and let God take the wheel of your life. Then, everything will be taken care of. And yet, when we reflect on the reality of our lives, as people who are experiencing some degree of trauma, we're re-encountering these patterns of resistance, of freezing up in social situations, of attacking ourselves after the social situation, of masking, of sacrificing our authenticity. And it feels like a build-up, a coagulation, a pent-up tightness in the nervous system that we then might even try to surrender to or to let go into, or to then have some big emotional release take place so that we can feel okay again. And with this sort of background hope that maybe one day if I just do enough of this, then I'll finally be able to be my authentic self, or I'll be able to let go enough that God just works through me. But unfortunately, again, if we be honest, well, maybe you have got to this point. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but when we reflect on our experience, we find that, yes, I'm still being really deeply inauthentic in social situations. I'm not being myself. I'm sacrificing my authenticity over my need for attachment to the group, to fit in. So maybe I people please. Maybe I hide behind a very well-developed spiritual front that makes it look like I'm calm and collected and have it together when, meanwhile I'm raging or I'm really upset. Or maybe I use other protective strategies like overcompensating for the fact that I'm suffering by acting out a certain persona. Maybe even just avoiding social situations entirely by justifying it as somewhat of like a spiritual pursuit. Like if I just keep meditating, then eventually I'll get over this need to be inauthentic by processing my stuff within the confines of my own room enough so then I can finally be myself, and that doesn't work for us either.
or just surrendering completely to the belief that we're entombed with this way of engaging and reacting to the world for the rest of our lives, and we're just going to always be inauthentic and there's no way out of it. So all of these are different strategies we might be using at the probably more than likely unconscious level. Even if we're aware of our patterns, it's not like we want to be inauthentic, right? Or we could be doing it consciously because we prefer to fit into the group rather than being our authentic self. But there's a cost to that. Yeah, deep down, if you're like me, if you're on the spiritual path, one of the core things that you really want is just to fully be yourself. I'm not going to put words in your mouth and say that's true for you. You have to check in your experience. Is that what I want? Is that what I want out of the spiritual path? To fully be myself again. I would say that's probably the most profound spiritual practice that we can set out on, is reclaiming our birthright of authenticity that we experienced in childhood. So like I've been alluding to, right, so we hold out for these spiritual practices that will get us there. So everything I've mentioned. So again, just awakening practice, being with sensation, TRE, breathwork, all these sorts of emotional release modalities. But they don't get us there. We keep falling back into that reactivity, into that distancing from our authentic expression, favoring attachment over authenticity, the need to fit into the group, need to be validated, the need to be liked in subtle or very significant ways, so that we don't express what's true, basically, and we sacrifice our authenticity to make that happen. Right? So, okay, if we're interested in authenticity, and I would encourage you to check in your experience, like you really have to look in your experience, like, because sometimes we can intellectually think like, yeah, I really want to be myself. But then when push comes to shove, we get put into a situation when we feel uncomfortable and all of those coping strategies are firing. When we're feeling it in our bones that we don't want to be authentic. That's when we ask the question, okay, what is it that I actually want? Do I really want authenticity? Am I willing to sacrifice that need to fit into the group in order to get to get my authenticity back online? And if you're like me, what you'll find is if you earnestly ask that at the level of the heart, not the level of the head, you will come up against some pretty strong conditioning that will be like, whoa, no, you can't do that, man. That's way too dangerous. Something really bad would happen. And yeah, right. So when we face that emotional learning, it's an emotional learning. It's built into the implicit memory, which is basically what it's like, the memory that we recruit when we ride a bike. Like when our bike tilts to the left slightly, our implicit memory comes online and says, no, you've got to correct yourself. You've got to recorrect yourself and come back to alignment. And that happens at an unconscious level because it's an emotional learning. The same thing goes for emotional learnings in social situations, and especially for humans because we are social creatures. We're very social creatures being raised primarily to be dependent on one another for the large part. So we can't just say, yeah, I want to be more authentic. We actually have to meet that emotional truth in our experience that we might not actually want to be authentic. We might not actually want to be ourselves. And we might even need to face that emotional truth that, yeah, I'm holding out for awakening to give me that authenticity that I desire. But I don't know if it's actually going to get it for me. Maybe I'm just trying to wake up so I can get what I think awakening will give me. Maybe I think that it will give me authenticity. And then we have this sort of vague, false image of what we think that will be like. Oh yeah, I'll just be happy all of the time and everyone will love me. Maybe not. have to check in your experience. What do I think awakening will get for me in relationships with others? That's a good question to ask. Do I think that it's just going to make everybody like me all of a sudden? Or do I think that it will just put me into a place of not caring about what anyone thinks of me? Awakening definitely is an important ingredient, but face the emotional truth in your experience. Really face and feel your body in those experiences when push comes to shove. Oh yeah, actually shit, like I'm feeling really contracted and I'm trying to use self-inquiry in this situation, in this social situation, and I'm hoping that if I just wake up right now a little bit deeper or something, then they'll finally like me. And then they'll finally appreciate me for who I am. I'll finally be seen. Well, we have to make that conscious. All of our hidden agendas of what we think awakening will get for us. And then we have to face the emotional truths, the very deep embodied emotional truths of our implicit memory by engaging with sensation in our body and asking, what is it that my deeper subconscious mind is trying to get out of this whole spiritual pursuit? And unfortunately, what I had to learn is that, and by just aligning to love and truth over and over again, that, man, I actually, when I was pursuing awakening, I really just wanted to be able to fit in, to be able to be really like okay in social situations. So I kept trying to wake up. I kept trying to use like orienting to sensation and just being with sensation, letting go, trying to surrender, or trying to wake up more deeply with the hope that that would come to fruition. But because it was really vague and I wasn't honoring the emotional truths in my experience of what it is that I actually wanted, it basically didn't give me access to the deeper truths, the deeper emotional truths. Because what I've come to believe and what I've experienced in my own direct experience and seen in others in the spheres that I'm part of is that what we're dealing with here is a fragmented sense of self. So if we just feel sensation, if we just have emotional releases on the surface level, and if we just do things like breath work only, or, while of course these things are good, or TRE, right? Of course, TRE is good as well. It gives us some degree of emotional regulation. TRE, by the way, trauma release exercises, founded by David Baselli, which is a good way to release tension and stress in the body. But when we're practicing in this way, what's happening is that we are addressing the surface level stuff. We're not getting really deep down into the buried parts of our emotional experience, the deepest, most primal, implicit memories that we learned growing up early in childhood, when our social self was forming more significantly in high school. All of these implicit memories that we learned. And this is alive for me because I was just the other day part of a social situation where I noticed a lot of inauthenticity arising, where I sacrificed my authentic expression in order to be fit in, to fit into the group. And some of the things like this still comes up, right? These emotional learnings are a continuous unwinding. If we're interested in authenticity, you can integrate more and more and unify more parts of our sense of self. But they can still arise. They arise here. But right there's a lot of karma we might have built up, either cross-generationally, passed down onto us, because the implicit memories are basically saying the things that we learned in childhood are screaming at us saying, don't do that, don't be authentic, don't say what's true here, dude, don't get angry here. Oh, if you get angry, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. If you show that you're feeling uncomfortable, this person's going to reject you, and that means you're going to be rejected by the group and you're going to be an outcast. Right? Sounds extreme, but if we really feel into the sensations in our body, these are the sorts of things that they're saying at the implicit level, like riding a bike. Our mind course corrects to those very deep unconscious memories until we make them conscious. We have to make them conscious. So this is where spirituality and why awakening will not get us there, because that awakening, while recognition of the true self, again, see episode 2, is a critically important process for healing, because we need to know and we need to understand at a deep level that we can create more space around these implicit memories that are coming up in experience. We're not identified with them when we're recognized and identified with our true self. And these other approaches, like just being with sensation, only resting with sensation, and that is sufficient to liberate us into deeper degrees of freedom, I don't believe it's true. Because again, we're not looking at the deeper buried stuff. And also the same goes for TRE. If we're just releasing things at the surface level, or if we're just releasing things through breathwork and emotional release, we're not getting to those buried places. And those buried places can feel terrifying. Like the sorts of things that maybe we learned at a young age, that if I were to really show the anger that is showing up in my body right now as a frozen, dense, tight energy that I don't even recognize as anger, or this like really deep sadness that I'm so terrified to show to anybody in a social encounter. You know, if I were to really show those parts of me, that would feel equivocal to death. That's how deep these primal conditionings and implicit memories can feel. The things we learn deep in childhood, right? So just what I'm trying to say is, if we just be with that superficial stuff by resting as awareness, being with sensation, using various modalities that only, and even emotional processing, if we're not getting to that more implicit memory, even emotional processing won't get us there, and unless we're doing it skillfully. For example, we might have an emotional experience arise that just says like, man, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid all the time. I can never get it right. And we might process that even at the level of the body. We might feel that emotion and process it in effort to access more of our authentic, full expression again, to be deeply ourselves. And we process that and we're like, yeah, okay, I processed it. It's not going to come up anymore. And then like 3 days later, we face the same situation, and that same implicit memory arises again. Like, oh, I'm stupid. And we're like, why is this coming up again? It's because we're not getting to the core affective emotional experience. We're not taking it deep enough. Because, for example, if we feel dumb, maybe we had to learn that we were dumb because maybe our sibling or our parent were really sort of like eccentric and wanted to be in control all of the time. And we had to learn that I have to be dumb so that I put myself down a notch, so that they don't belittle me when I try to contest or step up and control the situation, rather than them doing that. So I have to be dumb so that they don't lash out at me, for example. They don't get really angry at me. So if we just process that surface level stuff, like the I'm dumb, or whatever it is that I feel scared to express or tell this person that I'm not comfortable around, like being around them or something, what we're actually avoiding, even if we process that, is the deeper layers of buried pain that are much deeper and embodied deep in our gut, that just say like, I'm really angry at this person and I can't stand to be with them, that we had to learn to push down so that we could stay safe and get love. So we can't set those boundaries. So we have to really get to these deeper places and experience that these more superficial spiritual techniques. I'm not creating a hierarchy here. Everything has its place. I really mean that. Like sometimes we need to do TRE to relax our nervous system. Sometimes breath work is incredibly useful if we're needing to let go of something. But we just need to have that understanding, what I've come to believe, that if we do that, we might not actually be getting to those deeper places. So the invitation is to look in those deeper places. Make that unconscious material conscious. So that's why awakening isn't really going to get us there, because again, it's not really looking actively at the deeper content. And, even spiritual teachers might allude to you that you don't need to look in these places. That's the message I received as well sometimes. Whether or not they overtly say that, maybe it comes through in the transmission, or maybe it simply just gets co-opted by the ego that doesn't want to look in those darker places. That's very possible too. But that's where the goal is. It's a beautiful poem. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's called The Well of Grief, recited by a gentleman in the documentary called The Work. So The Well of Grief by David White. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink. The secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. In a way, I think maybe unintentionally or unconsciously, some spiritual teachings can be interpreted by the mind that we're getting down to those small round coins at the bottom of the well, where there's an extraction and integration of the deepest parts of ourselves that are what drive the authenticity, what drive us into authenticity at the deepest level, by going down to the bottom of the well and meeting ourselves in our core affect, in the most core affecting experience that we took on from childhood, and really facing that. Until we meet that place in our psyche, we can't reconsolidate our memory to experience the world through a different paradigm. We'll still be running on those old scripts, and we'll be thinking that those superficial places of spiritual practice are doing that work for us, but we're not actually getting into that core affective place, the deeper places in our psyche, which actually, while we accrue various schemas, psychological schemas, which are basically programs that say that going to those places is the most terrifying thing in the whole world. And it really does feel like that in our system. And it was needed. Critically, it was needed. These schemas were needed at some point to keep us safe from harm and to stay safe and get love. All of these schemas make sense. But then when we go there, when we go down to the bottom of the well to find those small round gold coins thrown by those who wished for something else, then that's where we find the deepest freedom, the deepest liberation, and the capacity to reconsolidate our memory, if we so choose, into a different way of operating in the world. And I'll do another episode on this later, but this is actually scientifically proven that when we go to these places, when we activate the neurological pathways and we really feel like we're that young child again, deep down in experience, we really feel like we're that small wounded child that felt like he couldn't say what was true. And we've gone there at the emotional level when we're at the bottom of the well. We're feeling that. There's actual science to prove through memory reconsolidation that we can change these patterns through a simple process, actually, by studying what actually led to transformational change in people. That's what psychologists have discovered, is that there is a certain process that takes place where when we're at the bottom of the well, feeling that pattern, and we juxtapose it with different memories that counteract this experience that we feel to be so true. For example, if I think that my core affective memory is that I can't express anger or set a boundary in a social situation and be my fullest authentic self, then that's what we'll really believe until we juxtapose it by feeling that place and then feeling out, oh, where are there times in my life that I have experienced anger and I haven't been rejected? And then we can hold both of those experiences in the palms of our hand on either side and really let that integrate and percolate and really stay in that place of conflicting agenda and then make a decision from that place. Again, this is scientifically backed. It's not just speculation. There's evidence-based studies to prove that this is how we change our implicit memory, those deeply unconscious places that we turn to unconsciously when we're in a social situation, thinking that awakening will just give us the goods. So that's why we can't just be ourselves in social situations, even after an awakening, is because these implicit memory structures aren't being touched by the more bare awareness practices like self-inquiry, TRE, breathwork, etc., etc. I sound like a broken record now, but we need to actually use a deeper approach, which is, what I will be doing with people in my 90-day program. I really want to take people and identify like 2 to 3, keep it tight and focused, 2 to 3 schemas, emotional schemas, things that are essentially causing the most significant amount of suffering in our daily lives. Really hone in on that through comprehensive testing, get a clear idea of what that is, and then focus in on it with the very deep, coherent work where we go right to the core, to the bottom of the well, through evidence-based somatic inquiry, essentially unifying coherence therapy with somatic inquiry, killer bee inquiries, and memory reconciliation to get to those core affecting areas and deepen in the understanding of our patterns, how they're playing out, and finally integrate them to create what's called transformational change, things that actually leads to a permanent shift where we don't have to keep monitoring our experience over and over again when we go into these situations, because we're actually integrated the parts that are driving at the implicit level of the memory, that are creating the behaviors, creating that feeling of not being able to be ourselves. Also, like tracking these things too. So tracking progress, making sure it's really empirical, that we're actually making progress with this as well. So it's not just coaching. And it would also be a curriculum, learning curriculum tailored to non-dual seekers as well, addressing some of the core frustrations with supplementary guided meditations to really help the integration take place once we do the work in between sessions each week. So I really want to create the ultimate product that I would have gone crazy for 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I was really struggling with a complete difficult time integrating all of these challenging emotional experiences arising, really facing these places in a way that works. It's like backed by evidence and it is done in a meaningful way to go deep. So anyway, that's a bit of a plug. I'll be announcing that soon, very shortly. I'm just getting it together even more and finalizing that structure and how I want to do it. But because I think ultimately what we're moving toward with this whole process is, while in a way, because what even is authenticity, right? If we're talking about authenticity and attachment and fully being ourselves again, ultimately we already are, in this moment right now, our most authentic self. We are truly our most authentic self. We couldn't be any other way than what we are right now. Yet paradoxically, or maybe not paradoxically, maybe we can move toward a sense of bringing more of these fragmented parts of ourselves that we learn through childhood into deeper coherence, meaning that they're unified. They're not, so it's not like you're expressing authentically and you have 50 parts that are screaming in the background saying, don't do that, don't say that, don't do that thing. It's more like we're aligned because we've brought all those screaming parts together witnessed them, made them fully conscious at the level of the body, gone right to the depths of where they came from, feeling them out and then reconsolidating them into a direction that we're happy with, giving them the space and attention that they desperately need and are craving for, that awakening isn't giving us, that spiritual practices aren't giving us. I'm not going to say all the practices again, but that, and then aligning in that direction. There's more coherence with our sense of self. Things feel much more fluid. We're not feeling like a congested ball of emotional density and frozen emotion every time we're going into like a social situation, or not even social situations, just general situations in life. You know, maybe that integrating that part of us that feels stifled whenever we go to do a creative project or something, or create our website or whatever it is, you know. I want to finish up with a beautiful quote from a poem called The Invitation. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. Can you bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul? That's a beautiful standard to hold ourselves to. Maybe a ever deepening standard that we might ever not come to completion with. I certainly haven't yet. So let's be compassionate with ourselves, and let's meet these parts that are really causing us strife, that are starving for our attention, that I think in our heart of hearts, we know we want to go there, but we just haven't had the space or the capacity yet to go there. But maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to turn down through the black water and go to the place we cannot breathe, in the service of man, just living an authentic, integrated, loving, grounded, empowered life, rather than letting these outdated scripts continue to drive us, and holding out for awakening to give us access to our deepest or most authentic self. At least this is my paradigm. This is what makes the most sense for me right now. And this is what I've experienced in life, is when we can really get to these places and meet our deepest self. That's where the gold is. Over and over again, I've experienced that in authentic circles that I'm a part of, in men's groups I was previously a part of, in retreats I've attended. That's when the heart comes alive. That's really when my heart comes alive the most, is when we can really just drop off that mask and go to that deeper place. And there's nothing we can't be afraid of when that right space is created for us. Subscribe to the newsletter if you want to stay updated and get in line for when that program releases. I'm going to do a beta test soon for a discounted price, most likely. So you'll be the first to know and get a discount if you want to jump on board with that and help me test out the program. Sign up to the newsletter for that. And drop a comment if you have any questions or have anything to mention. Like the video and share it with someone that you think will find it valuable. That really helps me out too. And a lot of love to you guys. And let's go all the way. You know, let's integrate in the name of love and truth. That's all I care about, man. All right, a lot of love to you guys.